Hey, welcome to the Empowered and Free podcast. My name is Erin Kimbrell, and I'm a counselor, certified life coach, breathwork coach, and small town mom of two. I know firsthand what it feels like to live with high functioning anxiety. For most of my life, I had so much mental mess, anxiety, people pleasing, perfectionism, overthinking, constant worrying, and never feeling good enough. On my decade-long journey to feeling better, I've learned how to take back my life from high-functioning anxiety and helped others to do the same through my coaching and breathwork programs. Now I want to share everything I know with you. This podcast will help you feel empowered over your high-functioning anxiety and free to finally live the life of your dreams. Now, grab a cup of coffee, get comfy, and dive into the episode. I'm Erin Kimbrell, and this is the Empowered and Free podcast. Hey, friend. Today, let's talk about the three biggest differences between high-functioning anxiety and regular anxiety. So I want you to leave today knowing if you have high-functioning anxiety or if you have just regular old anxiety, generalized anxiety, low-functioning anxiety. These are all terms that you hear me talking about today. Now, remember that this podcast is just for education, friends. It is not for diagnosis. If you feel like you need a diagnosis, I highly recommend that you reach out to a mental health professional to get that diagnosis that you're seeking. On a quick note about that, remember, I'm not a huge fan of a diagnosis because of this one reason. It can lead us to feeling like that diagnosis is our ball and chain. It can feel like a heavy weight, something that we're stuck with forever. Okay. I talk a lot about this in my story in episode 1 of the podcast when I finally had kind of this light bulb moment that I had anxiety. I started to wear that anxiety like a label. I started to use it as an excuse for doing or avoiding, really, rather than avoiding a lot of things. And it just wasn't helpful for me. Truly, it became a big obstacle. And I talk about that all in episode 1. So go listen to that. I just don't want you to feel like you're stuck with this forever. As a reminder, friends, I'm a counselor. I have my master's degree in counseling. So I am familiar with the diagnostic criteria for anxiety. And I do think it can be helpful at times to explain how you're feeling, to validate what's going on. And so I want you to listen with that in mind today. Let's take a look at the criteria for an anxiety diagnosis. First of all, excessive worry that's hard to control. Okay, I'm putting this in a really simplified form for you today. If you find that your mind is kind of always worrying, always thinking about the worst thing that could happen, worst case scenario, what if type thoughts, and it's really hard to control those or to stop thinking about those. That's what I'm talking about there. You also might have symptoms like feeling on edge. Anybody ever felt that way where you just feel like something bad is going to happen? You just kind of feel that doom and gloom coming, especially when things are going really good, really well. You feel like something's bad is about to happen. You might also notice that you're tired really easily, even if you've gotten enough sleep. That's because anxiety has our mind and our body running kind of on hyperspeed a lot of the times. You have trouble concentrating. It's really hard to focus on one thing when, again, your mind is running the show with all these other thoughts. Irritability is a big sign for anxiety. In fact, that's my number one symptom that I have when I notice that I am kind of snapping at everybody. Every little thing sets me off. And I just feel like that is a symptom for me for sure. Tight muscles is another one that I experience, and another one here on this list for the criteria. I used to notice, even my chiropractor commented one time that my shoulders were always kind of up at my ears. Just that tightness in your muscles in your body is another sign. Trouble falling asleep, trouble sleeping, insomnia, all of these are another experience that people have when you are struggling with anxiety. And friends, I got to mention this. Breath work is like my number one tool when I am not only anxious, but also when I'm struggling with sleep. So I highly recommend you check that out if you're somebody who struggles with sleep as well. Breath work is a way to just turn off the mind. So when your mind's running a million miles a minute, try some breathwork, friends. Check out my breathwork membership at heyerinkimbrell.com/breathe. You can try it free for 7 days and see if it helps you sleep if you struggle with that. All right, next, let's talk about the key here in this criteria for an anxiety diagnosis. The key is that your anxiety, worry, or the physical symptoms are causing clinically significant distress or impairment in your life, in your social life, in your work life, your occupational life, or any other important areas of functioning. This might include your motherhood or your relationship, depending on what you have kind of going on in your life. And you might also notice that you have some avoidance behaviors. You avoid your anxiety triggers or your fears, which we'll talk about both of these in more detail today. So that is what is classified as anxiety, right? The clinical diagnosis. Now, high functioning anxiety is not a clinical diagnosis. We talk about this in episodes 2, and then I give you a lot of examples in episodes 3. So go check out those if you haven't listened already. You'll hear me talk about how high functioning anxiety is like anxiety, but with a fake smile, right? We kind of look like everything's great on the outside. We are just kind of wearing that mask that I'm fine, everything's fine, I'm great. But underneath the surface, we're like a duck that's paddling as hard as it possibly can just to keep up with the demands of life, right? So we seem like we're cool, calm, and collected, but that's not the reality. And you remember, I talked again about this in episode 2 and 3. When you feel the symptoms of anxiety, that excessive worry, feeling on edge, irritability, but everybody else kind of thinks that you're successful, that everything's going well, you have your life together, you're accomplished. That's when we know that we're probably feeling more of that high functioning anxiety instead. And a lot of us with high functioning anxiety probably missed a diagnosis earlier in life because again, we looked like we had it together. We looked like we were okay, like we're capable, like we're high achieving. Plus, this was our normal, friends. Like we lived like this every single day. So we didn't know that not everyone else felt this way. Again, go back and listen to my story, episode 1. You need to check out all of those episodes if you haven't listened already. But let's go ahead and get into here the 3 biggest differences between high functioning anxiety and regular anxiety. So the first one is your level of functioning. So here's what I mean by this. People with high functioning anxiety are able to function at a higher level, right? The name says it all. And the reason why is they're able to kind of suppress how they're feeling. They're able to push through those feelings, or really they're able to cope with what's going on. Maybe they've learned some coping skills over the years. They have some of those positive reinforcements that help them move through life a little bit better. So you're not interfering with your ability to complete your daily tasks, your daily responsibilities. So here, my friends, is a key question I want you to ask yourself. If you've got a journal, I encourage you pause in just a minute when I ask, write down some answers. If not, just pause and reflect on where you're at. Here's a question. How do your anxious feelings and symptoms impact your day? How do your anxious feelings and symptoms, aka your anxiety, how does that impact your day? Do you still have the ability to manage everyday tasks and responsibilities or not? So pause it here, take a second to answer that, and then come back. All right, friends, if you answered that question by saying, like, yeah, I'm actually really struggling to get things done in my day to day, then you might actually have regular anxiety, or low functioning anxiety is another term that it's caused here. Okay, this is when, if we talk about normal versus abnormal, some level of anxiety is always normal, right? But when we're kind of going into abnormal, and I'm using everything in quotes here because what is normal even, but when we're classifying something as abnormal, it's when it kind of meets that criteria that it's really inhibiting your function in life. And here are 5 signs that you have low functioning anxiety. Number 1 is shut down or have just kind of what we call a breakdown, right? I hear clients calling this all the time. I just had a breakdown. I had a mental breakdown. I had an emotional breakdown. When we shut down, when we're in that freeze state, and I'll talk about that on another episode, that's how we know. Sign number one. Sign number two is maybe you're just in complete avoidance. You're avoiding whatever is causing that anxiety. Maybe it's a person or a group of people. Maybe it's a certain place or public, in general, somewhere outside of your home. Maybe it's certain things, right? Which leads into number three, you start having phobias, which are fears of specific things. Number four, you seek control through obsessive compulsive behaviors. Okay. That need to control all the time, especially when we're noticing some of those OCD behaviors. That's another sign. And then number five, you isolate yourself, you withdraw from your life, your daily life. And the reason is that you're avoiding those anxiety triggers. Okay. I say all of this with love. Please don't feel like any of these things I'm saying are criticizing, shaming, blaming. It's not that way. I'm trying to just point out some things that you might notice if you have low functioning anxiety. Okay. I know that you're doing the best you can right now with what you have, with the resources you have. Okay. We are all doing the best we can every single day with the resources we have. And some of us have better, stronger resources than others. Okay. So no shame in this game. The reality is that the problems caused by these 5 signs of low functioning anxiety are that exactly that. They don't allow you to function in your life day to day at the level in which you want. Okay. So here are some practicals. I've worked with many women who struggle with low functioning anxiety. They have a hard time leaving the house. Maybe they have a hard time going in public or shopping, going to their kids' school. Maybe they struggle with driving a car or getting on an airplane, right? Then we have really specific phobias too, which I even have a specific type of phobia to snakes. I'm really working through that. Maybe I'll do another episode all about that if you guys are interested. But these type of fears that are outside of the quote normal are causing us to not be able to do these things that we want to do, like drive a car, go shopping, go to the doctor, simple things that we would love to do in life. So again, the difference here is in the name. High functioning anxiety means that you have anxiety, but you're still functioning at a higher level. Your anxiety is not completely debilitating. You can still do some of those things that many people wish to do in life. Okay. All right. Number 2 of the biggest differences between high functioning and low functioning anxiety. Number 2 is your natural response. And what do I mean by this? You guys have probably heard of fight or flight, right? You heard of those responses? I'm going to give you a really simplified description of this today. I would love to do an in-depth episode on this, but anxiety triggers our natural fight or flight response. If you have low functioning anxiety, you typically jump immediately to that flight response. You dip out. You're done. Peace out, right? You avoid and you run. And again, saying this with love because I'm like number one avoider here. Avoidance is one of my number one protectors. So I get it. But when we avoid something, it actually completely exacerbates the anxiety. It makes it so much worse, right? The more you avoid your anxiety and your triggers, the worse it gets. And this is part of the anxiety cycle. And on the flip side, people with high functioning anxiety tend to jump to the fight mode. Okay. Not flight, but fight. They figure out ways to move through the anxiety and they learn how to cope with symptoms. And you're probably in that boat if you're listening today, right? You probably in certain situations have just pushed yourself harder and pumped yourself through that anxiety provoking situation. So what are some examples of that? Well, maybe you focus on your goals, right? Who is like a goal person who loves to just get that planner out, get that list out and journal and just write down all the different goals and the things that you're going to achieve and all the stuff you're going to do, right? You focus on the goals, you focus on achieving and productivity. It feels so good for you to check things off your little listy. And I love a listy. Hello. I mean, I titled this 3 biggest differences because I love a list. A list just makes me feel like I have it all together. So I get that. Another example is you use routines and you use schedules as a way to help you meet those goals and to give you a sense of, here we go, control. Why are we doing a lot of these behaviors? For a sense of control. Okay. I also really thrive with a schedule, and maybe you do too. All right. The third kind of example I want to give you here is that you overachieve. You love to just kind of go past everyone's expectations to get that praise, to get that confirmation so people can say, wow, that's amazing. That's incredible. How'd you even do that? I don't even know how you do it all, right? Have you heard that before? Maybe you become really critical of yourself. You're hard on yourself. You've set the bar way too high and you just beat yourself up when you don't meet that goal, even though it probably wasn't even a realistic goal in the first place. Man, been there, done that. Okay. And the last one I'll mention here, and again, we're talking through ways that we kind of push ourselves through these anxiety provoking situations. The last one is that you people please. You don't want to let people down. So you do anything and everything to keep everybody else happy and probably put yourself on the back burner. So, as a result of all of these things that I just talked about, pushing yourself through that anxiety, jumping into fight mode, kind of attacking and going after it, you get praise, you get confirmation, you get reinforcement, and it just continues the behaviors over and over and over again. Okay. This, unfortunately, stops you from getting help. Okay. That's another difference is people with low functioning anxiety oftentimes get help sooner. People with high functioning anxiety seem successful. So it stops us from getting help oftentimes. We don't want to lose control. We love our control. We love our lists and our calendars and our routines and all the things. And we don't want to let other people down. We don't want them to see our mess, see our stuff, see our imperfection. What? No, not even an option. And lastly, let's talk about number 3 and the biggest differences between high functioning anxiety and low functioning anxiety. And this one, my friends, boils down to the fear that you're feeling. Anxiety really keeps us stuck, right? We talked about avoidance. We've talked about flight. We end up getting stuck a lot. But high functioning anxiety ends up kind of pushing us forward. And that's due to the fears that we feel. So let's break that down. We know, we've talked about today, anxiety causes us to avoid lots of avoidance behaviors. We avoid the thing that scares us. So what are we scared of? What's the fear? When we're in an anxiety state, our fears are those things that we usually need to do to function in life. Going in public, okay, leaving the house, driving a car. We avoid doing those things. They feel so big and intense. There's no way we could do them. Maybe it's just an overall fear of people outside of your home. You just feel like the outside world isn't even safe. Okay. So we avoid. Those are the fears that are wrapped a lot around anxiety. When we have high functioning anxiety, a lot of our fear has to do with failure. We're scared to mess up. We're scared to make a mistake, and we avoid that failure at all cost. So what's it do? Back to what we just talked about. It propels us forward. We can't fail. We've got to go. We've got to figure it out, push through. Because you're terrified to make a mistake, it causes you to perfect things, to do them perfectly, to do them exceptionally well, better than anybody can imagine. And what do you get again? Here we go. Praise. That's why we have this need to achieve, whether it comes in the form of an award, a promotion, just being recognized, a shout out, a pat on the back, just that positive comment that somebody might say about us, right? We're working for that because we cannot fail. It is not even an option. So just paying attention to where does the fear come from? Is it these bigger functions of life that we need to do? Or is the fear stemming from the fear of failure? Okay. All right. In summary, let's wrap this up, friends. Whether you have regular old anxiety, which is low functioning anxiety, whether you have low functioning anxiety or high functioning anxiety, we all have the same symptoms, right? We feel it in our body. There are so many symptoms of anxiety. I'll do a whole separate episode on that as well. Some of my main ones I'll talk about here. You might have a heavy chest, feel that weight on your chest. You might feel like you can't catch a deep breath. Maybe you notice that your thoughts are all over the place. All those worst case scenarios are running through your head. Maybe you're shaking. Your hand is shaking, physically shaking. Maybe you struggle with sleep. You have headaches all the time. Your stomach hurts. So it doesn't matter if we have low functioning or high functioning anxiety, we're still experiencing anxiety symptoms. But let's go back to that criteria for diagnosis. The anxiety, the worry, the physical symptoms cause that clinically significant distress or impairment in our important areas of functioning. Okay. I'm not saying that you're only one or the other. You are not only anxiety or only experiencing high functioning anxiety. That's not quite how it works. In fact, I kind of oscillate back and forth. I can think of examples for both of these situations for myself personally that I've gone through. And also remember that high functioning anxiety isn't even an official diagnosis. It's just a way for us to better understand ourselves and what we're going through. Because you can see here through this episode, there are differences between them. And I've related to both at different times in my life. Also, I'm not saying that one is worse or better than the other. High functioning anxiety isn't better than low functioning anxiety. They're different. They're actually both really hard to deal with because of the games that your mind plays. Either way, anxiety holds you back, right? High functioning anxiety affects you because it limits you. It holds you back from going after your true potential, your dreams, your goals. You're too scared to mess up, so you don't even try. Think about that for a second. You don't even try. Back to that fear of failure. If I was still ruled by my high functioning anxiety, I can guarantee I wouldn't even be here speaking to you right now. To be on social media, to be on a podcast, all of these things are so far outside of my comfort zone. And for years, my anxiety told me, you can't do this. You're not good enough, right? All that fear of failure was so strong for me. So the bottom line is either way, whether you're dealing with anxiety or high functioning anxiety, it sucks to live like this long term. Like, let's just put it how it is. If you have anxiety, you're avoiding life, you're missing out on your life. Maybe you're not leaving your house because you're scared to drive a car. Maybe you're missing out on moments with your kids or your friends or your spouse. Maybe you're terrified to get on an airplane, so you're missing out on trips that you could be taking, that trip of the lifetime. You feel trapped by your anxiety. And if you have high functioning anxiety, this is also sucky long term. It's unattainable because you're tired, you're exhausted, friend. You are stretched out way too thin in your life. You've overextended yourself. You're not showing up in life the way you want to because you're riddled with that anxiety and worry. You're stressed out, you're burnt out, and you need a permanent vacation, my friend. So, wow, that felt heavy and a little bit negative, not going to lie, but I know anxiety is tough. And so, what do we do about it? My friends, there is a solution. And it comes in two parts. Part number one, you learn the right tools for you. What are the things that you do to help yourself feel better when you're feeling anxious? So these are mindset tools. These are somatic tools, which means body-based tools. Breath work is one of them. Hello, you guys know I love breath work. Okay. Part two, you have to get to the root of the anxiety and heal it so it doesn't continue to control your life. If you've been here a minute, you hear me talking all the time about healing your anxiety at the root. And this is what has been the biggest difference in my life, in my client's life. We're not just looking to cope. We're not just looking to manage the anxiety. We're looking to heal. We're looking to go on that deeper level to help you feel better long term so that you're not having to just constantly deal with this anxious feeling for the rest of your life, friend. Now, I'm not saying you're never going to feel anxious again because you're a human being. You're not a robot. Only robots never feel anxious, right? Anxiety is actually a normal human emotion. This is a feeling we have when we feel like we're unsafe, we're in danger, And that's because it's our survival response. Remember, we talked about that. But right now, your anxiety switch is just turned on a little bit too high and you're anxious more than you want to be. So what do we need to do? We need to learn to turn that switch off by healing your anxiety at the root. And that, my friends, is how you take back your life from anxiety. You combine the right tools for anxiety with the inner work to heal your anxiety, and you're golden. You've won. You've won the biggest prize of your life. So if that's something you want, make sure you do not miss my announcement coming on Wednesday, March 1st, 2023. It's going to be everything that you want and so much that you do not even know you need yet. Oh, I cannot wait to hear how it changes your lives. I'm super excited, you guys. Now, if you're not listening in real time, if you're already in the future, head on over to episode 12, where I share this big announcement. All right, my friends, I hope this was helpful. I will talk to you very soon. Have a good day. Hey, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. You don't know how much it means to me. If you'd like more behind the scenes content, inspiration, and daily reminders that encourage and uplift you, follow me on Instagram at heyerinkimbrell and send me a DM to say hey. If any of the episodes have been super helpful for you, please consider leaving me a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you like to listen. It helps me so incredibly much, and it allows the podcast to be seen by other people who need it. If you want to learn more from me, head to heyerinkimbrell.com. That's where you'll find all my free resources, read the podcast show notes, and learn more information about my online coaching and breathwork programs that help you create the life you want. If you want to keep the conversation going from today's episode, join us in our exclusive podcast Facebook community, Empowered and Free Help for High Functioning Anxiety. I'm here for you, and I'm always cheering you on. I'll see you next time. I'm Erin Kimbrell, and this is the Empowered and Free podcast.